Hello, welcome to Only in Illinois, your weekly recap from Reboot Illinois. I'm Madeline Dubeck here with Matt Dietrich in Springfield, and a couple of things increasing the pressure exponentially on getting a budget accomplished and a grand bargain, as it's being called in the Senate, done. Right, Matt? The first one is yet another credit downgrade for the state of Illinois from Fitch Ratings. Matt, explain what that means and what Fitch had to say in their report that went along with the downgrade.
Right. This was completely expected. Everyone knew it was coming if they didn't get something done by January 31st. And, we've said over and over again, Illinois has the worst credit rating of any state in the nation. So what that means is we pay more in interest for our bonds than for our borrowing than any other state does. And what was so interesting about the Fitch downgrade was not the fact that it happened. We knew that was coming, but some of the wording that was used in when it was delivered. For example, Fitch said that even if the Senate plan, the 13 bills that might be a framework for an actual state budget, even if that's successful, quote, the failure to act has fundamentally weakened the state's financial profile. And Fitch also said that if this continues, if the legislature can't get a budget done, then Illinois should expect further downgrades. But you saw wording like fundamentally weakened and just all kinds of things from Fitch telling us what we already know, which is that our government has become dysfunctional. We are spending on autopilot. We're spending a lot more than we're taking in.
Yeah, it's been dysfunctional for a good 2 years now. And since you and I last talked, and since our last Only in Illinois, Matt, another pressure point came from the Attorney General of Illinois, Lisa Madigan, who filed suit in St. Clair County Court to say that it is illegal to be paying state employees because the legislature hasn't actually authorized that appropriation. And this is something that you have been saying for a long time, Matt, that the Attorney General could do and should do to kind of bring some pressure to bear and force the issue of resolving this compromise.
Right. Well, way back in July of 2015, when all this was starting and when the budget impasse was just seen as a temporary minor thing, that was when I wrote a column then saying basically what a whole lot of other people were saying. And you don't have to be a constitutional scholar or a lawyer to read the Illinois Constitution and see that the state cannot spend money without authority from the General Assembly to spend that money, and that includes paychecks for state employees. And what I have been saying ever since then was that the reason the budget impasse has been allowed to go on for all this time, for 19 months, is because state employees are being paid. And as far as most people see, government is functioning just fine. It's only those people who are dependent on government services. For example, you have a child with autism, or you have an elderly loved one who relies on Meals on Wheels. You have a college student who's dependent on a MAP grant that's not showing up. These kind of things, if they don't directly affect you, you probably think government's working just fine. When you remove that pressure from the General Assembly and from the governor, and when you don't have 60,000 angry state employees who aren't being paid, you remove a big source of pressure, and that's why this thing has gone on and on and on, amounting to creating what Fitch says is our fundamentally weakened financial position now.
Absolutely. So we are weak. We have a lawsuit underway to pressure the situation from Lisa Madigan. And also this week we had a not quite legislation, but a framework, a path to legislation issued by the state's Illinois School Funding Reform Commission, which was created by Governor Rauner and included Democrats and Republicans from both chambers. And interestingly, one lawmaker on that panel this week, who has some of the biggest different kinds of school districts within his legislative district, said that all three of them said this was a model that they believe is worth exploring. So maybe something will come of this next week. We'll see, Matt. What do you think? And also,
it's possible. And
go ahead.
And what you're talking about there, Madeline, of course, is what is supposed to be Senate Bill 1. That is the first bill in the 13-bill package that the Republican and Democratic leaders of the Illinois Senate have put forth as a possible framework for an overall budget. The issue now, though, is that commission issued a report. And we've seen umpteen reports saying how unfair the way state school funding aid is handed out and how unfair the distribution is. What we haven't seen is an actual bill that can be put into before lawmakers for a vote and possibly signed into law to actually change this system. So yes, it's good that the commission finished its work. You've got Republicans and Democrats on that commission, but we've still got to see a bill. And if in this package, the way it's written, if one of these 13 bills fails, they all go away. And then, and the Lisa Madigan lawsuit, by the way, is seeking a February 28th deadline. If Lisa Madigan is successful, then as of February 28th, the state controller, Susana Mendoza, would no longer be able to issue state employee paychecks unless there is a budget put into place by then. So pressure is on. We're waiting to see what happens with all these bills. They'll be voting on them probably next week in the Senate, so there should be some contentious committee hearings.
And meanwhile, in response to the Lisa Madigan lawsuit, there is a House representative who is pushing a bill that would actually authorize paychecks for state employees, which would again take the pressure off the situation. So we will be keeping track of all of that. We have begun a in-depth look at each of the components of this 13-bill package that we're calling Inside the Grand Bargain. We'll be producing those in the days ahead too, so be sure to check that series out on rebootillinois.com. Matt, anything else to add, or does that do it for this week?
Well, not really anything to add, but just to reiterate that you have to keep in mind we have two things that are really pushing on the General Assembly and the governor right now, and that is the downgrade from Fitch, the strong language that arrived with it, and the threat of another downgrade, and also Lisa Madigan's lawsuit, which actually could bring on a government shutdown. We'll throw one more thing into the mix here, and that is on February 15th, Governor Bruce Rauner is supposed to give his budget address. All of this stuff going on in the background is going to make that an awfully interesting speech, and we'll be listening closely.
All right, so that's it for this week's edition of Only in Illinois. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again next week.